So I'm very honored and humbled to have this position in the State Department. My job title says two very strong and active verbs. One is I'm to monitor anti-Semitism, and the other is I'm to combat it. And I just want to tell you, I've been on the job for almost 6 months, and I'm a terrible failure. I have not eradicated the world of anti-Semitism. And I'm realistic and know that I won't. But what I'm learning in the State Department is something that any of you who know me know that I am a pretty fierce and passionate advocate. And when you're a fierce and passionate advocate, you're never happy, because there's always something else to do and something else to push. Well, I'm learning the importance of baby steps. And may I tell you, they're very important. Monitoring anti-Semitism is not an easy thing, and it's a really painful thing. In the State Department, I have been integrated into the entire department. The person who held this job before, his office was off-site and was not integrated into the workings of the entire foreign policy apparatus. I am there working with the regional offices, with the various functional offices, policy, etc. And my job is to make everyone realize anti-Semitism is really important. I am housed in the Bureau of Human Rights, and so it is an education and a challenge to make everyone understand that fighting anti-Semitism is a fundamental human rights issue. 2009 was a very bad year for human rights. And 2009 was a very, very bad year for Jews around the world. On every single continent, there was a huge increase in acts and attitudes of anti-Semitism. It spiked in January and February. It is clearly tied to the Gaza incursion. And it leveled off then in March, April, and beyond, but leveled off much higher than it was in 2008. Not good. Now, I think some of the reason that we had so many more reports was because somebody was demanding the reports of 194 countries. And when you have somebody who's responsible for really pushing and saying, yeah, but what happened at that synagogue and what happened at that Independence Day parade, the incidents start increasing because somebody's talking about it. Of the 194 countries that we annually report on, 70 of them were serious when it came to acts of anti-Semitism and spikes. You've read the papers. Many of the incidents are reported. We know, for instance, that in France, they had a 300% increase in incidents of anti-Semitism. Not good. Not good at all. What did France decide to do? They appointed a me. They appointed an ambassador at large who is to focus on anti-Semitism and xenophobia in France. His first act, once he was named, was to come to the United States and find out how do we do it. I want to talk a little bit about the combating part of my job title. It is a huge challenge. Sometimes, we have to sit back and realize this is the oldest hatred that we know of. It's really deep. It's really hard to get complete cultures to change. And we in America cherish our First Amendment. And so we believe in the freedom of expression. And so when people say hateful things, in Germany, if somebody denies that the Holocaust exists, it's a crime. they can go to prison. We don't do that in this country. Our belief is when bad or hate speech happens, it calls for more good speech. And that's how I'm moving ahead in my job to combat anti-Semitism. It won't surprise you to know, with my background in community relations, that I am bringing to the job a community relations approach. We have diplomacy as one of the most important tools I have. And what is that? It means I go one-on-one with countries. Just this week, I met at length with people from Lithuania, the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, and the Speaker, a woman, fascinating. Met with Greece, who actually, met with all of Greece. The ambassador actually called me, and I think this is worthy of mention. It's the only time it's happened. They called me and said, could you come over? We just want to discuss things with you. And as I was going over, I realized they're reaching out to me. I wonder what this is about when they've got Athens burning right now with riots. And I walked in and I explained that I was really sorry to hear about what's going on in the streets of Greece with such unrest. And they said, well, that's what we wanted to talk to you about. Because we know when there's economic turmoil or instability, the people of my country, he says, look for a scapegoat, and they will point to the Jews. And I thanked him for his sensitivity to this and his reaching out. And I said, if God forbid something happens, we'll work together to call it out, to say what it is, how terrible it is, and call for action. And just a few days later, there was desecration of cemeteries and a firebomb in a synagogue. They were right to say, we're worried. We're very concerned about children's education. We're concerned about what we see in textbooks around the world and how Jews are depicted and how children's television and other media are depicting Jews and how they're referring to us and how we're to blame for so much that's going on. And we are actively engaged in monitoring that and confronting it. We also work in law enforcement. We do training of law enforcement. And we train because sometimes law enforcement doesn't really know what a hate crime is, doesn't really know what constitutes anti-Semitism. And the law enforcement communities around really do want help, and they reach out to us and we engage in that. But the most important thing I do, and I do this everywhere I travel, I think it's the most important part of combating anti-Semitism, is the old community relationship building. When I go to another country, I of course meet with the government leaders. I of course meet with the Jewish community to express solidarity and to find out what their concerns are and hear from them what's happening. But I meet with human rights organizations, with interfaith organizations, with intergroup and interethnic organizations. I talk about anti-Semitism to them, and I hear from them what other bad hatreds are happening that they're working on. And having a representative from the US government go and meet with these organizations that are operating on a shoestring. Sometimes we have to go and find them because they're not well known. It's the most important part of what I do, because we Jews can't fight anti-Semitism alone.